The airport never stopped moving. Even on the brightest morning, with clear blue skies stretching endlessly above the runways, thousands of lives crossed paths in silence. Business executives hurried through security with expensive luggage, children laughed while chasing rolling suitcases, flight attendants smiled despite their exhaustion, and ground crews worked tirelessly beneath the blazing daylight. But on one unforgettable morning, everything came to a standstill because one ordinary single father refused to surrender his dignity. What began as a cruel order meant to humiliate a hard-working man would soon become a lesson that every person standing inside the terminal would remember for the rest of their lives. Before we continue this emotional story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that no hard-working person should ever be judged by their position in life. Your support helps bring more heartfelt stories to people around the world. Elias Carter had never imagined that life would become so difficult. At 36 years old, he was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, completely alone after losing his wife to a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Every morning before sunrise, while most of the city was still asleep, Elias prepared breakfast, packed Sophie's lunch, braided her hair as best as he could despite never learning properly, and walked her to school before beginning his long shift as an airport operations technician. His uniform was always spotless even though it had been repaired several times. His shoes carried the marks of endless miles across concrete runways, yet he polished them every evening because he believed that self-respect was something nobody could ever take away. Sophie admired her father more than anyone else in the world. She knew he skipped buying new clothes so she could attend art classes. She noticed the tired smile he forced after every double shift. Although they lived in a small apartment with worn furniture and an old dining table, their home overflowed with laughter, bedtime stories, and handmade drawings covering nearly every wall. To Sophie, her father was the richest man alive because he never stopped giving her hope. That particular morning, the airport welcomed an important visitor. Aurora Langford, the powerful CEO of Skybridge International Airports, arrived unexpectedly to conduct a surprise inspection. Known throughout the aviation industry for demanding perfection, she had built a reputation for making impossible decisions without hesitation. Employees whispered her name with fear whenever her private jet landed. Rumors claimed she had fired senior managers over minor mistakes and expected complete obedience from everyone under her authority. As Aurora walked through the terminal surrounded by executives and security staff, every employee stood straighter. Managers nervously adjusted their ties while supervisors rushed to fix even the smallest imperfections. Elias continued inspecting emergency communication systems near Gate 18, unaware that the inspection group was approaching. One of the executives accidentally dropped an expensive leather folder onto the polished floor. Documents scattered everywhere. Several employees rushed forward to help collect the papers, but Aurora stopped them with a raised hand. Her sharp eyes settled on Elias, who had remained focused on completing a safety checklist that required immediate attention before an arriving aircraft reached the gate. She called him over with a commanding gesture. Elias politely approached, respectfully explaining that he was finishing a mandatory safety inspection which would only take another minute. The explanation irritated Aurora. Believing he had questioned her authority in front of senior executives, she decided to make an example of him. She coldly declared that if he wanted to keep his job, he would kneel on the polished airport floor and apologize for disrespecting the company's leadership. The terminal suddenly became silent. Travelers slowed their steps. Employees stared at the heartbreaking scene. Elias looked around, not because he feared losing his position, but because he imagined how Sophie would feel if she ever learned her father had abandoned his dignity to protect a paycheck. He thought about the promises he had made to his late wife, that no matter how difficult life became, Sophie would always grow up seeing courage instead of fear. With calm eyes and trembling hands, Elias quietly stood his ground. He respectfully accepted responsibility for any misunderstanding but gently explained that he could never kneel simply to satisfy someone's pride. He added that respect should always be mutual, no matter a person's title or salary. Aurora's expression hardened. She ordered human resources to begin termination paperwork immediately. Several employees lowered their heads. Others silently wiped tears from their eyes. Nobody dared challenge the CEO. At that exact moment, something entirely unexpected happened. The airport's Emergency Operations Center received multiple simultaneous alerts. A sophisticated communication failure had disrupted coordination between radar synchronization systems, runway guidance networks, and aircraft dispatch channels. Within seconds, control towers across the region began reporting inconsistencies that made normal departures unsafe. Aviation authorities immediately suspended every departing flight until engineers identified the source of the malfunction. Panic spread through the terminal. Departure boards filled with delays. Pilots remained inside their aircraft. Passengers crowded airline service desks. Television reporters quickly gathered outside the airport. Senior executives looked at each other with growing concern because every grounded aircraft meant enormous financial losses. Aurora demanded immediate answers. The airport's chief engineer rushed into the terminal carrying technical reports. His worried face turned even paler when he learned Elias had just been dismissed. He explained that Elias was the only technician who had personally rebuilt part of the emergency communications network after severe storm damage the previous year. The modified system contained customized safety protocols that existed only because of Elias's months of unpaid overtime and dedication. Nobody else understood every adjustment he had made. The silence that followed felt heavier than thunder. Aurora slowly turned toward the man she had humiliated only moments earlier. For the first time that day, she saw not a maintenance employee but a professional whose quiet commitment had protected thousands of travelers without asking for recognition. Elias had already removed his employee identification badge and placed it neatly on a nearby desk. Although disappointed, he showed no anger. He simply thanked his co-workers for their friendship and prepared to leave the airport. The chief engineer begged him to stay. Government aviation officials urgently requested his assistance because passenger safety depended upon restoring the communication network correctly. They explained that rushing repairs without understanding his customized safety architecture could create far greater risks. Elias paused. His heart carried the pain of public humiliation. Yet he looked through the terminal windows toward the parked aircraft filled with families, grandparents, children, students, and people traveling to weddings, funerals, hospitals, and life-changing opportunities. Helping them mattered more than proving a point. Without asking for his job back, without demanding an apology, and without mentioning what had happened, Elias quietly walked toward the operations center. For the next 3 exhausting hours beneath bright afternoon sunlight streaming through enormous airport windows, Elias worked beside engineers, controllers, technicians, and software specialists. He patiently guided each team through complicated diagnostic procedures, identified a hidden synchronization failure triggered by a rare software conflict, and carefully restored every critical safety connection. Finally, one by one, green status lights illuminated across the operations center. Controllers confirmed stable communications. Runway systems returned online. Pilots received clearance. The first aircraft lifted gracefully into the clear blue daytime sky while hundreds of people inside the terminal applauded without even knowing exactly who had saved their journey. Many employees knew. They looked toward Elias with gratitude that words could never fully express. Aurora watched quietly from a distance. For perhaps the first time in many years, she realized how easily authority could become arrogance. She remembered her own father, who had once worked as a factory mechanic and taught her that every honest profession deserved equal respect. Somewhere during decades of chasing success, she had forgotten that lesson. That evening, she requested a private meeting with Elias. Instead of another order, she offered a sincere apology before everyone present. She admitted her mistake openly, accepted responsibility for humiliating him, and acknowledged that leadership without humility ultimately destroys trust. The entire terminal became silent again. This time, not because of fear. Because genuine apologies are rarer than perfect victories. Aurora not only reinstated Elias immediately but also promoted him to Director of Operational Safety Innovation, placing him in charge of improving emergency systems across every airport in the company's network. She established a new workplace policy requiring leadership training focused on empathy, respect, and recognizing every employee's contribution regardless of position. News of the incident spread across television channels and social media. People admired not the grounded flights but the quiet strength of a father who chose dignity over humiliation and compassion over revenge. When Elias returned home that evening, Sophie ran into his arms carrying a colorful drawing she had made at school. It showed an airplane flying across a bright blue sky with two smiling people holding hands beneath it. Across the top she had written, "My dad helps everyone get home." Elias hugged her tightly as tears filled his eyes. He realized that promotions, awards, and recognition were temporary. But earning the admiration of his daughter through honesty would remain the greatest achievement of his entire life. Months later, Aurora personally visited Sophie's elementary school during Career Inspiration Day. Instead of delivering a speech about business success, she spoke about humility. She told students that true leaders never measure people by uniforms, salaries, or job titles. They measure them by character, integrity, and the kindness they show when nobody is watching. The audience applauded. Parents quietly smiled. Teachers wiped away tears. And Sophie proudly looked toward her father sitting in the back row, knowing that courage sometimes looks surprisingly ordinary. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Little Kindness Tales so more people can discover stories that remind us why compassion and respect still matter in today's world. Before the ending, please leave a comment telling us, what would you have done if you were standing in that airport that day? Because in the end, every flight eventually took off again beneath the bright daytime sky. Business resumed. Crowds returned. Announcements echoed through the terminals just as they always had. But the people who witnessed that extraordinary morning carried something far more valuable than a boarding pass. They carried the unforgettable reminder that true greatness is never found in making others kneel. It is found in lifting them up, honoring their dignity, and choosing kindness even when pride offers an easier path. And for Sophie, every airplane soaring into the endless blue became a quiet symbol of her father's unwavering courage, proving that the strongest people are often those who refuse to let hardship steal their humanity.